Yes, sir, we can see it.
We can see it, sir. Right on.
Oh, okay. Very, very good. Very good. So last week we had a session about basically about the parts in which your report will be divided into. Invariably, the skill sets, that the assessors will be looking for in your report, right? And I said that there are about five of those skill sets, and that we have the executive summary, we have the requirement one and two, we have the overall report, and we have the appendices, right? And I also mentioned that there are three analytical skills that can be used to analyze the case in the exam. Basically, these are the key points that we discussed last week. And I think I gave you this assignment to go and look at past cases and try to see how these analytical skills have been tested over the years. Right. So, the whole idea about this class is that we want to try as much as possible to know every of these parts of the report that you will write in the exam. The idea is that if you can understand, if in any way you are able to get to know, each and every of these areas, these skill sets, and you are also able to know each and every sub skill set under each of these skills, right? There's about 90% chance that you will pass the exam. So the whole thing we'll be doing is just to focus on these skill set and the relevant sub skills. So if you can understand this, then you have a chance to a very high chance to pass the exam. So last week we're about starting the executive summary before we had the networking. So today let's quickly look at the executive summary. Now, the executive summary in the case study exam is very, very related to is very, very similar to an abstract in the academics, right? So abstract in the academics is more like when the thing about academics is that there are criteria to get promotion in the academics. We have the lecturing criteria, we have the community service criteria, and we have the research criteria, right? So the research criteria, there's this idea that, if you don't publish, you perish, right? If you don't publish, you perish. So they have to publish whatever research they have carried out. And the thing about publishing is that the whole thing you want to gain from publishing is you get citation. Citation is more like many people are finding your work useful in their own research. Okay, so you want to get as much citations as possible, and the citations you get will also count in your promotion. So what can now enhance that citation is the abstract, and the thing is that, if there is no abstract in your work, it means a new researcher will have to read your whole research, and by doing so, how many pages of research will the person be able to read? And the issue might be that so many people might not be able to have that time to read your research work. But when there is an abstract, and you will see that abstract usually come at the beginning of every journal article, or maybe any um, research work, right? So when a new researcher sees your abstract, in less than 2 minutes, such new researcher would be able to understand everything you have done in that your research. I mean, we get a very detailed understanding about each and every. Meanwhile, the purpose will even accommodate the research purpose of the research. You even get the methodology. What approach have you used in doing that your research? Maybe the qualitative or quantitative research approach, maybe even the mixed method approach, even some other analytical methods that you have used will be included in the methodology. Then after the methodology, you even include your findings. What did you find out in that research? What have you been able to, get to know more in that research? You include it. Then you include your conclusions as well as your recommendations. Now, the whole idea is that executive summary in case study is very similar. Is very similar to an abstract in the academics. Now, executive summary, the major purpose, so that just like the name implies, the executives who are majorly the short, precise, concise, for them to read. Now, if they read it and they find your work interesting, or they see that there are certain areas they need to know more in that your work, then they will have to go and look at. I mean, I'm in the world to read your short, and that will also give them detailed information about the whole work that you have done. That is the main reason why you have an executive summary in the case. So here are a few points you should note about executive summary. Now, executive summary should be presented as a stand-alone document. It should be presented as a standalone track. He or she will be able to just be on a page. The researcher picks it. He or she will be able to understand what the other researcher has done, everything about that research. We're able to understand it. So, on its own, okay, sorry, I think I don't know. I think it's just the network that is misbehaving. Right. So it has to be a standalone document. Once you an executive summary that you produce should represent everything that you have done in the in the body of the report. Now the other point is executive summary should not be more than a page or maximum of 2 pages. The thing is that once you are writing more than a page, it means you are only you're
It's time for you to sit down. Yeah, I'm listening to that person. Okay.
you are only repeating most of the things that you have written down in the report. So a page should be okay for your executive summary. It should be written in formal tone, right? Just like you have written your report in formal a formal report, and it should be written in formal tone. And you should avoid using first person pronouns such as I, we, are, like. I have done this analysis. We have done this analysis. So you should rather use sentences like the analysis shows that, okay, okay, the result of the analysis or the result of the research shows that, okay. So that is that about those key points that you should know about executive summary. Now, here are a few guidelines about executive summary. Now, the first thing is that you must state the purpose of your report. The purpose of that report that you have done, you must state it at the beginning of your executive summary. Just like I mentioned when I was discussing about abstract, every abstract, for every abstract, you have to state the purpose, the reason why you have carried out that research. Okay, you have to state it. Then your point should be organized as in the main report. You see, so most of the time you see that there is a way your report flows, right? So usually your report will flow like your report, okay? Then you have something like section one. Okay, so I'm back. I don't know why the network keep on going on and off. Okay, so you would have arranged your report in this manner, right? And the thing is, when you are now organizing your report, your executive summary, the flow should be that you are summarizing the key points under section one before you do section two. Not that you will now bring up the summary of key points under requirement two before you bring that of requirement one, right? So it should be arranged as you have arranged your normal report. Then you should avoid introducing information that you did not include in the main report. You should avoid introducing information you did not include in the main report. So most of the time, by the time you get to towards the end of requirement two, you might have just about 10, 15 more minutes. And what you hear from the examiner is they will ask you that 10 minutes more. Okay, so there will be some point that you want to include in that requirement two under the body of the report. But because there is no time again, you always want to go and spend the rest of the time on executive summary. So what we are saying is that you should not include that point that you have not included in the main report. But because you don't have that time now, you now want to include it in the executive summary. No. So you should only summarize what you have written in the body of the report. You should summarize results, conclusions, and recommendations made in the body
Who enjoyed
of
it?
the report. You should summarize results, conclusions, and recommendations as made in the body of the report. You should summarize that. You should format it as though in the main report. Read your executive summary carefully, ask yourself, is my message clear? Have I made conclusions and recommendations? So you should ensure that you have summarized your findings, conclusions, and recommendations. Then you should proofread and edit your work. You should proofread and edit your work. So here are a few questions your executive summary should answer. What is the report all about? What is the purpose of the report? Why are you doing the report? Why is it important? Right? What are the major findings or results in the report? And what are the conclusions from the findings and recommendations that you have made? You should ensure that your executive summary is able to answer these key questions. The mistakes that you should avoid in your executive summary: too much detailed background, because it is a summary and you are not expected to include detailed background again, because the detailed background you would have included that in
What
the
are we going to
body
do? Now, what are
in
we
the
to do?
body of the report. You'd have included the background in the body of the report. And you should not include too much detail in the executive summary. It's not a place for you to start, explaining and explaining, analyzing again, right? Okay, so you should avoid too much or too few detail again. So here is how marks are allocated. Remember I told you that, remember here I said that executive summary, there are five sub-skills under executive summary. I hope you remember that. So let's look at what these 5 sub-skills entails. What are you expected to do under the executive summary? Now let's look at that, because once you understand these 5 sub-skills, it means you already know what the assessors or the examiner wants you to do under your executive summary. So let's look at those 5 things. Now, the first one here is what we call the general skill. The general skill. So oftentimes, the general skill will look more like an introduction. In fact, excuse me, please. It's basically an introduction in the executive summary, because under that under that general skill or introduction, there are 4 things that you are expected to do. The first one is that you are expected to state the purpose of writing the report. What is the purpose of writing that report? The purpose might be that you are asked to help in analyzing the performance, the financial performance of a particular business over a period of time. That might be the purpose. In addition to that, you might also be asked to appraise a certain project or investment. That might just be the purpose of the report. They want to know whether the investment will be viable or not. So that might be the purpose. So to appraise or to analyze the financial performance of the business, and to appraise a certain investment decision. Right. Then you are to state the summary of the 2 requirements. You have to state the summary of the 2 requirements. I believe this is a straightforward point. Then the next thing is that you have to state assumptions that you have made in the report, right? So possibly while doing some computations, you may have assumed, let's say you assumed you were not given cost of capital, and you assume, say, 15% cost of capital. It should be stated under this introduction. Then you should state reservations or skepticism. So whatever skeptical issues that you may have identified in the body of the report, you should state it under the executive summary. Then the next thing is, that is the first sub-skill under executive summary, which means that the first thing you will do should be this. Under the introduction, under the executive summary, you do these 4 things. Then the next thing, the number 2 sub-skill, is that you summarize the conclusions of requirement 1. You summarize the conclusions of requirement 1. This is straightforward. It means that you must have done certain conclusions under requirement 1. And remember, I told you that this is exactly the way your report will look like. Okay? Remember also that I said that there are about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sub-skills under each of the requirements. Remember, I said that. So the thing about that is that here will be conclusions, and number 8 will be recommendations. Okay? So the same process is what you follow for requirement 2. So your requirement 2 will follow the same process. There will be conclusions and recommendations under section 2 for requirement 2. So here we are saying that the number 2 sub-skill under executive summary is that you are expected to summarize the conclusions of your requirement 1. Then the third thing you will do under executive summary is that you will also summarize what the recommendations of requirement 1. Then once we are done with that, then the number 4th thing is to summarize the conclusions of requirement 2. And the 5th thing you will do under your executive summary is to summarize the recommendations of requirement 2. So these are the 5 major things that you are expected to do under executive summary. And let me state this clearly, right? Anything you are doing outside these things will mean that you are only wasting your time. I mean, these are the areas where that will fetch you marks. So invariably, if you have done the first 10 year, that is 4 marks. That is 4 marks. If you have done this here, 4 marks. 4 marks here, 4 marks here, right? You have 4 marks here, 4 marks here, 4 marks here, and 4 marks and 4 marks here. That should give us the 20 marks for executive summary. Okay. So anything you do outside this things means that you are only wasting your what? You are only wasting your time. You are only wasting your time. So let's see a format for executive summary. Okay. Let me see. Yes. Okay. So here is a very brief format for executive summary. You can see that this is the part for introduction, where you will do these 4 things. Okay, you do these 4 things for your introduction. Okay, for the introduction, here are the things that you will do for the introduction. Then you might have section 1 for requirement 1 under the executive summary. Now here, I've included the summary of findings because there will be parts for findings. Though the way it will be marked, you are not really, required to state the findings. This is just included for teaching purpose. Okay. Okay, so if you have all the time in this world, you can include your findings. I am very sure that the reason why we are not having it in the marking guide is possibly because of mark allocation, right? So that may be the reason. But the major things that you are supposed to have are what? The summary of conclusions of requirement 1 and summary of recommendation for requirement 1. Then you go to the section 2 of your executive summary, where it is optional for you to include the findings, summary of findings. Then, but the two major things you should include are what? Summary of conclusion of requirement 2 and summary of recommendations for requirement 2. Okay, requirement 2. So that is all about executive summary. Do you have any question for me? Do you have any question for me? No. All right, thank you. Let's continue. So, again, let me take you back to the part of report. Now, I said this is the major part of the report that you will write. So, apart from we have done this, we have discussed the executive summary already, right? We have discussed the executive summary, so we are left with this. So before we go to let's see if we can discuss on the report structure and the appendices. So let's see if we can discuss on that. Now, let's look at the report structure first, the overall report. Now, the idea behind the overall report is that after looking at the key part of your report, then the assessors want to see some basic things that you are expected to include in your report. Just like when you write your report in the office. I don't know if you have noticed, when you write a report in the office and you did not do page numbering, your supervisor might say, come here, why didn't you include page numbering? Take it back, go and do that. And some other things that you are expected to include in the report. So let's look at it. Now, the overall report, there are two basic things, two basic sub-skills under the overall report. The first one is the report structure. So what are those things that you are expected to do under report structure? The first one is that you're expected to include sufficient and appropriate evidence. Sufficient and appropriate evidence. And here is how that is applicable. Here is how that is applicable. Remember, I told you that under the here is a very a skeletal uh, report format for the whole report. Okay, okay. So let's look at this. Let's look at this. So here is more like a skeletal format for the report. So what I'm saying is that, remember I said under this section 1, there are about 8 different things you are expected to do under this section 1. There are about 8 of these things that you are expected to do. Number 7 is conclusion. Number 8 is recommendation. So don't worry. I will take you through all of these 8 things because you have to understand it because you can write a before you can write a report. Right. So where the appropriate evidence comes in is that you have to one starting from section here, the heading for section 1, you have to put appropriate heading here so that the assessor will know what you are doing there. Possibly the requirement might be saying that you should evaluate the financial performance of that business for the last 5 years. So the heading here will be that evaluation. You might say evaluation of financial performance of ABC Limited. You can include two 2000 to 2005. That's about 6 years, right? Or 5 years. Okay, so that may be, you can see that clearly the assessor here we know that under this section 1, this person is evaluating the financial performance of the company between this period. Now here you will also tell them what you are doing here. It may be that you just want to discuss about, you want to show the highlight of of the of financial performance, highlights of financial performance of ABC what Limited. Here might just be that you want to discuss about the ratios. You want to discuss about the ratios of ABC what Limited. Here might just be that this is the analysis of what of ratios. Analysis of ratio. This might just be that you are looking at, whatever you are looking at, you should put appropriate headings that will tell the assessor what you are doing in that part of the report. The same thing is applicable to this section 2. So what we are saying is that once you present your report this way, then there is 1 mark. You will get 1 mark for putting appropriate headings in your report. Then appropriate use of paragraphs and sentences. Appropriate use of paragraphs and sentences. Now let me take you back to what we discussed earlier. Remember when I taught you about how grades are awarded in case study. How grades are awarded. How grades are awarded. So we discussed about how grades are awarded, and let me see. Yes. Look at it. Look at the grades. I said that we have 5 grades: the superior achievement, we have the superior achievement, the competent achievement, the below competent achievement, not competent achievement, and void. So the superior achievement is 4 marks, and it means that you must have made 4 relevant points. Now, what I want to say is that these points you are making now, you have to make your point in sentences, or you use paragraphs and be consistent with whichever one you want to use. Okay, so it means say under here now you have to make 4 points. So you have to make point A, point B, point C, point D before you get 4 marks. Okay, so each of these points should be made in a sentence, or say if you want to use paragraph, you use paragraph. So once you are making a point, maybe you are making a point about on revenue. So the point should be made about the sentence should be made on revenue. If you want to make another point, this point might be on cost of sales. And that's the major idea behind using sentences in making your point, so that you are not mixing up points. You are not mixing discussing on revenue, bringing cost of sales, bringing profitability, bringing administrative expenses and everything. You are not just discussing everything together under one particular point. You are separating the points under a sentence. Once you make a complete sentence, then you put full stop. So if your work is presented in this manner, that is very clear, using points, maybe sentences and paragraphs, then there is 1 mark for that. So you can see that these are just little things here that you include in your report here and there that will fetch you more marks. Now the other thing is legibility is 1 mark. Legibility is 1 mark in the exam. That is your handwriting. So what I will just say is that just make sure that your handwriting is in such a way that it will be very clear and very easy for the marker to see. Oftentimes, when I have reports of my students, I find it really very difficult to read some reports, and I will have to abandon such reports. I will abandon it. You put on the generator before. Exactly. Okay. Excuse me, please. 1 minute. Okay, so you have to ensure that your handwriting is very clear. Is very clear. Okay, and that is 1 mark for using very clear handwriting. And the other one is correctly and sequentially numbered pages. So here is your report. Here is your report. What we are saying is that the answer booklet that you use, though many students have said that it is usually numbered, but the thing is that the pages on which you write your own report, please number the pages 1 to whatever number it ends. You should number the pages of your report. At least there is 1 mark for that. There is 1 mark for you to number the pages of your report. So the second sub skill under the overall report is the report style and language. The report style and language under the overall report style and language. Now, here are the things that you need to include in your report. The first one is appropriate disclaimer. You should include appropriate disclaimer if the report is an external report. So here's the thing. Sometimes that there are two basic scenario in cases, right? The first one might be that you are working in a company as a junior accountant under maybe a senior accountant, and the board of directors have requested your senior accountant to prepare a report, and the job has been delegated to you. But the whole thing is that between you and your senior accountant, you do the report, you submit to him, then the final report will be sent to the board of directors within that company. That is an internal report. The other scenario could be that you are working in a firm of accountants. You are working in a firm of accountants, and you are a trainee accountant or a junior accountant. Okay, and the job has been delegated to you too. So you do the job. Is between you and your maybe supervisor or something, and maybe a partner, in the firm. So after the whole report from the firm, the firm will now send the report to the client. Now, in this scenario, you will be writing an external report. And because it is an external report and it's coming from the firm, you have to include what? A disclaimer, appropriate disclaimer in the report. And if you do this, that is what? 1 mark in the exam. That is 1 mark in the exam. Now, if you have used formal language, yes, it is a formal report. So you are expected to use formal language. That is 1 mark also. If you have used if you have used tactful and ethical comments in the report, that is 1 mark also. Ethical comment could be in such a way that you are not making statement or comment on unethical. You are not recommending your client to do something that is unethical, right? So I can give an example. We're in a class a few diets ago, and the client in the case was paying bribe. Okay, used to bribe the NEPA official. Instead of paying the bill directly, they have to bribe them and all that. So a student now stood up and made a comment that, so if the bribe we help in cutting cost, so I think they should continue paying the bribe. Such a comment is an unethical comment, and you cannot make such comment in the case. Okay. And a tactful comment on the other hand might be such a way that maybe you have analyzed, you have appraised a project, and it shows that it has a negative NPV. Okay. And from your knowledge of performance management and strategic financial management, the decision will be that they should reject such an investment, right? But when you are making, as a professional, you don't just make such comment, right? Though you can say that the analysis or the appraisal of the investment shows that it will generate a negative return, right? So instead of saying they should reject, you now say that you rather say that before the management make the final decision, they should consider some other factors. You can mention the factors, maybe the cost. Maybe there are some other costs that are not supposed to be included, and they have included those costs. You can mention them. Maybe there are some other inflows that have not been added. You can advise them to look at these other inflows and include it in the analysis, right? So you don't just make you don't just make comments on I mean, like that. So you have to be tactful in making your comment, because again, there are more reasons why businesses go on investment like that. The major reason might not be that they are looking at profitability. There may be some other reasons why they are taking on such investment. Then the last thing here is acceptable spelling and punctuation. Acceptable spelling and punctuation. That means that you have to be watchful of your words, in the report, right? So we have looked at this is what we have done so far. We have looked at the executive summary and we have looked at the overall report. And we have looked at these two sub skills under overall report, that is the report structure and the report style and language. And that is where you can get these 8 marks. That is how, if you have done those things, then these 8 marks can be awarded to you. So let's look at the other thing, which is the appendices. So the thing is that you have to create appendix for your report, and the appendix is more like the where you do your rough work, where you do your computations, right? So, and the thing is that you are not just expected to create computations anyhow, very rough computation. No. So, if you are doing ratio analysis, right, look at the way this ratio has been presented. We have 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and the figures are well spelled out, and the final figure is here. In fact, sometimes you can put your formula here, right? You put the formula of the ratio here, and you present everything very neat. So this is appendix 1 for requirement 1, and this is 4 marks. Appendix 1 for requirement 1 is 4 marks. Now this is appendix 2 for requirement 2, and it is 4 marks. And usually appendix is meant to be put at the last page of your report. You are supposed to put the appendix at the last page of your report. And the two appendices that you will create in the report will be 4 marks each. And that is how you can get these 8 marks under the appendices. Okay? Under the appendices. So, yes, if you have any question for me, please ask me. We are supposed to end this class by 12:30. Okay, we still have about 30 more minutes to go. Any question for me? Hello? Prosper, are you there?
I'm here, sir. Yes, sir.
Quick question for me. Fidelis. No question. Can I continue? Yes. Okay.
Yes,
All
sir, you
right.
can.
All right. Thank you. So let me continue. Now let's look at it. What we have done so far. Remember, I told you that in order to understand how to write the report, you have to understand each and every part of the report, and that is what we are doing. That means we have looked at the executive summary, we have looked at the overall report, we have looked at the appendices. So what we are left with is the body of the report, right? The body of the report is where we have the requirement 1 and 2, and that takes the larger share of the whole marks in the exam. That is about 64 marks. That's about 64 marks. So let's look at the body of the report. Now, one thing about the body of the report is that how we are looking at it, we also be considering how we can use the 3 analytical skills in answering or in writing the body of the report. That's how we look at it. How each of the 3 analytical skills are applicable to the body of the report. They also form the body of the report because you use it to solve the body of the report. And remember, I said that we have 3 major analytical skills. We have 3 major analytical skills in the exam. We have 3 major analytical skills. These are the analytical skills. We have the operational and strategic analytical skill. That is what we call business analysis. We have the financial statement analytical skill. That is the financial statement analysis or ratio analysis. And we have the financial data analytical skill. That is what we call the project appraiser. Project appraiser in the exam. I mean, that is where we do project appraiser in the exam. So let's look at these analytical skills as they form the body of the report. Okay, so let's see business analysis. Let's see business analysis. So from the word operational and strategic analytical scale, operational and strategic analytical scale. Now, now this is just a scenario. This will come from a scenario whereby we are to look at each and every aspect of a business operation. We want to look at the business operation and consider, business operations, there are more like three phases. We have the inputs, we have the operations, we have the operations, right? We have the operations and we have the output. You know, these are more like the three phases in every business operation. So what we are saying is that business analysis or operational and strategic analytical skill comes in such a way that when we are looking at how what are those issues that might be affecting the businesses in terms of the input. When we talk about the input, we are equally looking at when we talk about the input, we are looking at the source of what? Raw materials. We are looking at the source of raw materials. Because if anything is wrong with the source of raw material, possibly the due to depletion, maybe due to recent government policy, maybe due to whatever thing that may happen to the source of raw material, we affect the operations and we also affect what? The output of the business. And as such, the business will not make money. If that continues in years, that means the business is out of business. And that will lead to the end of the business. We can also talk about supplier relationship. Supplier relationship. If there is no good relationship between the supplier and the business, that may also lead to issues in the business. Maybe the supplier usually give supply materials on credit, and the credit is being abused. You are given 30 days period to pay back, but you are not paying back as at when due. That might result into the supplier taking away that source of funding for the business. There may be issue as to transportation, of what? Of raw material. So we are looking at what are those possible issues that may affect the input activities of the business. We could also talk about the possible issues that will affect the operation. When we talk about the operation, we are looking at machinery or technology. Are they using recent technology or outdated technology? Is there any breakdown in machinery? Because if there is breakdown in machinery, it can also affect what? The operations of the business. The business will not be able to produce. Okay? We might even talk about the welfare of the workers. Welfare of the workers. Because if the workers are not well taken care of, that may result into dispute. When there is dispute, that may result into strike action. When there's strike action, the business cannot produce. If the working environment is toxic, if it is not if it is not conducive, that may also result into issues. Okay, that may also result into issues. So we can talk about the output as to the the quality of final product. The quality of final product. What is the quality of final product? What is the activity marketing activity being done? What is the customer relationship? What is the customer relationship? And so much. So when we talk about operational and strategic analytical skill, we are looking at scenario whereby we want to analyze these business operations, the stages in business operations, how these issues affect or will affect the success of a business. So, so most of the time, because this is an analytical skill, there are tools. There are tools we use for in doing business analysis. What are those tools? They are the models. These are the models that you have learned in your CSME. Remember, I told you under the technical skill that you have to revise some models under CSME. You have to revise some other things under PM and SFM, under CR and FR. So these are the models. So one of my other colleagues, they will take you, they will do, just like a brief introduction on these models, you know. Hopefully, when there is enough time to do so. So these are the various models that can be used to do what? To do business analysis. So we have models for external environment, uh, to analyze the external environment of organizations. We have the Pestel model, we have the Potter's Diamond model, we have the Potter's Five Forces model, and we have the BCG model. We also have models for analyzing the internal environment. We have the models for analyzing the internal environment. We have the value chain model, BCG grid, gap analysis, benchmarking, the aims, the marketing, the money, the machine, and all that. We have the SWOT model. We have Porter's generic strategic model. We have lots of this model. We also have models for measuring the effectiveness of what? Of strategies. We have the critical success factors. We have the KPIs, key performance indicators. We have the balance scorecard. We have the value for money. We have the economic value added. So these are the various models that could be used to analyze cases. Now, there is one thing I need to show you before I discuss about those sub skills under that. So let's say under we have requirement one and you are asked to do business analysis, operational and strategic analysis. Remember there are, so this is what I'm talking about. Remember this part that there are eight sub skills under that. So let's assume this requirement one now is asking you to do operational and strategic analytical analysis, right? So I said that there are eight sub skills under that you have to do before you can get this 32 months. So before I show you that, there is something I want you to see so that you can learn how to do some basic analysis. So, so before you can use a model, let's assume this is a SWOT model, right? This is a SWOT model. So before you can use a SWOT model in the case, here's what you have to do. You have to be able to carry out this process. Identify and define the issue. You have to be able to identify and define a particular issue. Then consider its impact on the business, maybe detrimental, positive, or neutral. how will that issue impact on the business, and you should make recommendation on possible action to be taken. These are the three basic steps, and these steps can be called critical thinking. We can also call it critical thinking or critical analysis or critical analysis. And everything that you'll be doing under these three steps will just be you making just a point or a sentence. So let's look at it. Let's look at it. Um, so let's take, for instance, we want to pick. I'm coming. Okay. So let's creativity. So let's say that you have identified this strength in the business. So this might just be your appendix. Let's say this is the appendix one you have created for a SWOT model. You have strengths. These are the strengths. These are the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And you want to discuss about this high potential creativity of the human resources. So the identification will be that the identification will be that the identification will be that X and Y Limited has what? A high what? Potential for what? Of creativity of human resources, right? Of human resources. That is the identification of that issue. You have identified the issue. Okay? Then how will this issue that you have identified, or how will this trend impact on the business? It has helped the company in developing what? Products and services. It has helped the company in developing what? Products and services that meets the immediate demand of its what? Wide what? Range of customer. You can see that this is identification and definition of the strength. You know, you have identified it here, you have defined it, you know. In fact, you can also, it's more like you are looking at different ways by which this strength will impact on the business. It has helped S and Y Limited to gain customers, to gain customer trust, as they believe they will always get what they demand for, irrespective of whether they have it or not. It has also helped in building customer loyalty over the years, as majority of the customer base will always come back and go to not go to other suppliers for the same product. They believe that they believe S and Y Limited would have. This is evidence in the performance, as revenue has been growing over the years, and likewise profitability, you know, which is the impact of the what? Of the strength on the business. So you have identified it, you have talked about how it will impact the business. Okay. X and Y Limited should ensure. Remember, I said the third phase is to make recommendation. Make recommendation. You make recommendation. Okay, you make recommendation. So SNI Limited should ensure that human resources are retained and the level of customer satisfaction should be maintained. This is the recommendation. These steps should be applied in analyzing other factors in the what? In the SWOT model. In the SWOT model. Should be using. So any factor that you pick in any model. So this is not only applicable to SWOT model. This is not only applicable to SWOT model. Any model that you pick, you follow the same word, the same steps. So let me give you another example. Let's assume that let's assume that these staff, they are experienced. They are experienced, well experienced staff. And let's assume that we have a fashion business. So we have a client in a fashion business, and they have this strength. The woman have staff that are well experienced, right? So let's identify the issue. The issue here is that the fashion business, let's assume that ABC Fashion Fashion Limited has what? Well, what? Experienced experienced staff. Okay, that is the issue. That is the issue. Now the question becomes, if the company is having experienced staff in fashion industry, it means, and I want you to learn the logic in presenting your point. It will mean that when a customer comes and bring a new design, maybe a new design they just found on Instagram, used by one celebrity, and they now bring it to the madam, that madam will now say, oh yeah, see my staff, oh yeah, take this design, oh yeah, do it. So because they are experienced, what do you think will happen? It means that they will be able to produce exactly the same design brought by the client. This, it will not be as if the normal thing they say on Instagram, what I ordered versus what I got. But they will rather produce exactly what the client has brought. What will now happen with that? It means that the client will be satisfied. It will lead to customer what? Customer satisfaction. Customer satisfaction. So what I'm saying is that we can now go on and say that the experienced staff has what? Resulted into what? Into increased customer what? Satisfaction over the years. Over the years. How? How? The question becomes, how has that resulted into customer satisfaction? This is how. So, the customer that just got a well-designed, cloth for herself, by the time she's going to the outing, by the time she leaves the house, so many people will be admiring the clothes and say, ah, madam, this cloth is fine. Who is your fashion designer? I like it. So even the other woman that has not been greeting her for the past 5 years, we even admire the cloth. By the time she gets to the party among her friends, all of her friends will start demanding, let me have the contact of this your fashion designer now. This dress is fantastic. Everybody will be admiring the cloth. At the end of the day, she will be giving out the what? The contact. So what will that result into? It means that this contact that people have gotten now, they will start going there to take their addresses to the person again. Now, which means that, we say this has resulted into what? This increase in what? Customer satisfaction. Which is as what? A result of what? Of As a result of what? Increased in demand for 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 the business services. There was increase in demand. So the experienced staff has resulted into what? Increase in demand. Because there was an increase in demand, which will also lead to what? Which will also leading to what? Increase in what? Increased what? Increased revenue, which also leads to increased what? Revenue and what? And profitability. Increase in revenue and profitability. So the experienced staff has resulted into what? Into increased customer satisfaction. It resulted in increase in demand for business services, which has resulted into what? Increase in what? revenue and what profitability. So then you make recommendation immediately. You make recommendation. So let's assume the madam has been maltreating the experienced staff. In fact, she has not been paying them well. Then we can advise her to do what? We can recommend that. We can recommend that. We can recommend that. We can recommend that staff welfare, staff welfare should be what? Should be increased. Staff welfare should be increased. We can just leave it like that. That staff welfare should be increased. So should we increase the staff welfare? So these are the three basic steps that you should take in analyzing any factor, any issue that you come across in the world in any case. So these steps will also be used in other what analytical skills. In fact, when we are discussing in class like this, when you want to make a point, you should follow these steps. Right, you should follow these steps so that you are making a very reasonable point. You'll be making a very reasonable point this way. All right. So let's now look at those skills, those skills that are required for you to do business analysis. What are those skills that are required for you to do business analysis? Okay, so we have about 10 minutes, less than 20 minutes to go. So let's stop here today so that we can continue from here in our next class. So let me give you time to ask your question before we end the class. Oh, yeah, ask me your question.
I wanted to ask, when you
Okay,
were talking about the models that are
okay,
used for analysis,
okay.
with this model, are these models going to be given to us, or are we the one to identify the model that will suit a particular case scenario?
Oh, okay, so thank you for that question. That's a fantastic question. So in some cases, you are to identify the suitable model for the scenario. So let me give you an example. There was a particular diet, I think November 2017 diet. So we had a case that was presented in a value chain scenario, right? In a value chain scenario. And under the requirement, the examiner never mentioned about value chain model. But you see that because the case has been designed, has been written in a value chain way, it means, of course, every participant in the exam should be able to identify that it is a value chain model that is suitable for such what? For such scenario. Now, let me give you a possible scenario. Let's assume that a case is given on um, what do you call it, competition, about competition, the impact of competition on an industry, let's say telecommunication industry in Nigeria. Have you noticed that when MTN just give a make an offer, say buy 100 naira recharge card and get 10 gigabytes, before you know it, Airtel will make his own offer, say buy 100 naira airtime and get 20 gigabytes. Others will also follow. So that is example of competition. Okay. And competition will affect profit. So if a case has been presented in that way, then you have to identify which model will be suitable for such scenario. So which model will be suitable for that kind of scenario? Are you still there?
Yes, I'm here, sir.
Yes, I said, which model do you think would be suitable for that kind of scenario when you have to analyze impact of competition on an industry?
I don't know.
Okay, you don't know. Okay, that is assignment number two. Assignment number two. All right. So one, in some cases, maybe the assessor, I mean, the examiner might just be, maybe religious and have that sympathy and give you on a platter of gold the model that you have to use to solve the case. But at this level, I believe that a case that we ask you to use a model will be silent on the model. You have to use your intuition to identify the most suitable what model for such scenario. Of course, if the case is about you identifying what are those external factors that are affecting a particular client in a particular industry, and you know that you might be using pestle model alongside a SWOT model to solve that kind of case. So you have to be able to identify that model. Thank you for that question. Any other question? Any other question?
So my network trip off
Oh,
at
sorry.
the question when you were about answering one question.
Okay, when I was about answering that question, you will get
Not that
the
question, the one before, the first illustration.
the first illustration. Which one is that? Sir? No, you can rewatch the recording and get that from the recording. That's not an issue. Just request for the recording. The class is being recorded, so that's not an issue. You can get that. Any other question, please? Any other question? Any other question? Okay. So if we do not have questions again, so let's stop here today so that we can continue in our next class. For today, we have discussed about three topics already. We looked at the executive summary, we looked at the overall report, we looked at the appendices, and we have started the operational and strategic analytical skill. So I will see you in next class by the grace of God. Goodbye.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Goodbye, sir.
All
Goodbye,
right.
sir. Thank you.